Hakeem Jeffries, leader of the Democrats in Congress, refuses to say the terminology abolish ICE. Here it is.
And how can we stop ICE agents from behaving with violent impunity?
But now, wouldn't it stop them if they just stopped being an agency? Just abolish ICE.
But I don't know what you're suggesting in terms of the funding fight that's in front of us now. What we're with the one big ugly, but what we're trying to achieve, for instance, I think the most significant thing that can be done amongst the whole list of things that we've talked about, right, substantively, is to ensure that when ICE agents violate the law, when they violate the law, they can be criminally investigated and prosecuted and are not shielded by this principle of absolute immunity, which is one of the things that we've put on the table. And the reason why, just so that I'm clear, my thinking, that we see these people behaving the way they are behaving. It's not just the masks. And of course, we've demanded that the masks come down. It's the fact that they think that the Department of Justice, under Pam Bondi, who's a disgrace, will never investigate them.
Brother Hakeem, if you're not capable of saying the phrase abolish ICE, if you're not willing to agree that ICE is beyond repair and reform, when you're in meetings with individuals who are not as friendly as those individuals would be on a discussion panel, and those doors are closed, I can't trust that you will actually lead with passion and conviction. You're still acting as if you are preparing to take a damn SAT. The individuals who are already at ICE, sir, have been recruited because they are not capable of reform. So they recruited individuals who are not qualified to be the police, who don't give a damn about rule of law, and who intentionally want to create a design of American government that's antithetical to the progress of Black and brown folk, women, LGBTQ communities, etc. Now, those are the individuals who are hired today. Some installations have replaced 80% of their ICE security work detail, meaning the culture has changed. So, sir, in all due respect, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're in a position of leadership, and you may want to attempt to do so at some point in the very near future. Because as long as you continue to contextualize and create intellectual conversation around something where folk are being shot in the face and killed in broad daylight, as long as you're able to intellectualize it, you will never get to the space of doing something about it. Now, you're not touched the same way these communities are being touched. You are touched by proxy, but you're not touched the way these communities are being touched. And the truth is, you probably never will be. So there's a disconnect between your discourse and the reality of millions of folks around this country. Joy Reid did a remarkable job. She pressed him again about ICE. Here it is.
So, sir, if I could just say, if they're willing to break the law of that and they act with so much impunity, is this an agency that can even be reformed? It seems to me that ICE structurally is so flawed that it would perhaps make more sense to end this agency rather than tinker with it. Do you see what I mean?
What I'm suggesting is that the type of changes that give us the best chance to end the violence now by putting the pressure on the Republicans, because of course, anything that passes now is going to require Republican votes, just a handful in the House and in the Senate, to do the right thing for the American people. And giving state attorney generals, for instance, like Keith Ellison or Tish James, the ability to criminally investigate or prosecute ICE agents who break the law and engage in violence is perhaps one of the more immediate ways under the Trump administration. He's the president right now. Republicans control the House and the Senate. It's one of the most immediate ways that we can give the country the best chance to end the brutality and the violence that is being engaged in with impunity.
I love you, brother, but you ain't ready. You're not ready. Do you see where we are? Do you understand the context of American politics today? When you wanted to be leader, this was a very different America at that time. It has changed quickly, yes, but it is a very different reality for a leader in politics today. There's a polarization that's taking place. You have less middle ground. You have a shrinking independent voter demographic. You have polarization. That has built-in negatives and positives, dear brother. The negatives are known. Here are the positives. We get to see people for who they truly are. Because in polarization, you only become more of what you really are. If you're a great, decent human being, you become more of that. If you are hell-bent on destruction and only hide that destruction through your religiosity, you become more of that. So we get to see people for who they really are. We also get to do some things we would never accomplish under gradualism. Gradualism would have never got us to this place. And people are looking for leaders to lead. This is why those who are on the opposite side of your political agenda are so successful, because those individuals are actually leading, yes, leading people to hell, but they are leading. And because of that, they have people that are following. If you want to lead folk out of hell, you have to lead with the same vigor, if not more, on the other side. And that is the era that you're in. And if you don't want to be a leader in that context, step aside, sir. That answer did not sit well with this particular panelist. Here it is.
Over 60% of Americans now disapprove of ICE. That means in 3 weeks, it's gone from 30% to 60%. Now, if I may, I'm going to be a bit blunt here. Leaders lead. And what we've seen is people are impressionable. If you lead on something, people will follow. It seems the wind is behind your back for the first time ever. ICE has a history. CPP has a history of terrorizing Black and brown communities. People are asking themselves, why are we, our taxpayer dollars, paying for masked, lawless men to terrorize our communities, kidnap people, take children, and kill Americans? So I ask you, and I'm doing a following up to Joy, because I want an answer to this. You said you want to rein in ICE. I'm talking about the long term now. Why not lead and say abolish ICE? Because what you're telling us is you want our taxpayer dollars to pay for a lawless masked armed agency to continue terrorizing our cities. And I'm trying to figure out how you, as a leader, can be telling Americans that their taxpayer dollars should be going to ICE.
I don't understand anything that you just said. I don't understand anything that you've just said to me when I've made clear that taxpayer dollars should be used to make life more affordable for the American people, not brutalize or kill them. That's the whole reason we're in this fight right now. That's the whole reason the DHS is getting ready to shut down. That's
so
the whole
abolish
reason
ICE.
why
You agree with me, Joy? Abolish ICE.
Listen, I'm going to use the language that I want to use. You can use the language that you want to use.
Leader Jeffries, you're having a 2026 conversation in a 1996 mindset. It is a different America today. Both times, did you all notice both times when Joy Reid first presented the question to Hakeem Jeffries, and then when the panelists presented the context to Hakeem Jeffries, both times he acted as if he did not understand the question or did not understand their sentiment. Well, I have a third person to remind you of. Do you understand the sentiment of your colleague, Congressman Hank Johnson? Here it is.
do you make of DHS making watch lists of American protesters?
You know, I mean, it's deeply disturbing that we have become a surveillance state. I listened to a woman today talk about how, as a Minnesota constitutionalist following ICE, that person was met at their driveway when they pulled up at home by a ICE agent telling them that they were now on ICE's list and being labeled as domestic terrorists. And so this is ongoing in our communities across the country. It's a reign of terror, and we can't afford to continue to go down this path. And that's why we're going to have to abolish ICE. It cannot be reformed. It's going to have to be abolished.
Clear, concise, with conviction. Did not measure the response, did not check in with the Democratic caucus for a talking point before saying the truth. It just happens to be a truth that the vast majority of Americans, regardless of political affiliation, agree with. I had a 1-hour conversation yesterday with Congressman Hank Johnson. The brother gets it. He's a remarkable human being who gets it. So there is some friction in wording, but it's not just in wording, it's in sentiment and implementation. Fund ICE through reform, or abolish them through exacting action and become the co-equal branch of government that you're supposed to be. So there has been a disconnect. Jeffries and Schumer's reforms include, ending warrantless arrest, no mask requiring IDs, no racial profiling, new use of force standards. Now, once again, this is the presentation of Jeffries and Schumer, New use of force standards and requiring body cameras, also prohibiting funds from being used to conduct enforcement near sensitive locations, including medical facilities, schools, childcare facilities, churches, polling places, courts, etc. Keep that up, Jordan. Let me go through this list again. Ending warrantless arrest. You're not supposed to have them now. So you're going to make it extra illegal. Warrantless entry will be more illegal. It's already illegal, but they're doing it. No mask. Requiring IDs. No racial profiling. You haven't been able to accomplish that with your local city police or county sheriffs. And you think that ICE is going to follow. What is your enforcement? You name the infraction. What's the penalty if they racially profile? Oh, you left that part out. You just don't want them to do it. Okay. New use of force standards. They don't give a damn about your written code, sir. And requiring body cameras. So what happens if they turn it off? What happens if they left it at the facility site or inside the car or at home? There's no penalty, no enforcement. Your infraction is only as powerful as the enforcement behind it. Also prohibiting funds from being used to conduct enforcement near sensitive locations. How will you enforce that? Back in 2018, Representative AOC broke down abolishing ICE. Quote, before ICE, we had INS. So we had the Immigration and Naturalization Services. There are very intense operations that we do need to monitor. We have to keep tabs on human trafficking, child sex trafficking, child sexual or sexually explicit content, and of course, just standard immigration in and out. And so INS had handled that before, she says. And so criminal investigations will get forwarded to the Department of Justice, which had the infrastructure to kind of handle those proceedings. And then there are other investigatory arms, either within the FBI or within Health and Human Services, that would handle those different pockets. Quote, Now, when the Department of Homeland Security was established, remember, this is a baby organization. This is a new organization. When the Department of Homeland Security was established, it's concentrated and centralized all of those things into one. And those operations in and of themselves can continue. You know, you can have border and customs do the things that they have always done. The one line that I do want to draw is that when I started talking about this over the weekend, it kind of recently blew up, and I'm starting to see particularly other congressional candidates say, quote, let's return to the INS. And that I want to make sure is not correct either. Quote, this is not about going back to the INS. This is really about, in some ways, we need to go all the way back to the root of our immigration policy to begin with, which the very first immigration policy law passed in the United States was the Chinese Exclusion Act in the 1800s. We've talked about that in Indisputable. And so the very bedrock of U.S. immigration policy, the very beginning of it was a policy based on racial exclusion. And there's more, and I'm going to read. I just want to remind people the beginning of a thing in policy is important because the beginning of a policy creates the DNA of the policy. The DNA of the policy. And when the DNA of a policy is established, we're fighting nurture against nature. The nature of the policy is racist. We're hoping that we can nurture it into a better formation of itself, but the nature of the policy is racist. It goes for many policies in America. We are at nature versus nurture. Quote, and I think that we need to really reimagine. There you go. That's how solutions happen in the creative space of the mind. We need to really reimagine our immigration policy based around two things, like I had said before, foreign policy and criminal justice, and additionally, our economic goals as well. And we really kind of need, I think, to reimagine our immigration services as part of an economic engine, as part of an accommodation to our own foreign policy aims, and where necessary, enforcement of serious crimes like human trafficking and so on. So abolishing ICE doesn't mean get rid of our immigration policy, but what it does mean is to get rid of the draconian enforcement that has happened since 2003 that routinely violates our civil rights because, frankly, it was designed with that structure in mind. That is correct. The backstory of ICE, the Immigration Naturalization Service, INS, was established in 1933 by President Franklin D. Roosevelt to consolidate and regulate Border Patrol activities, oversee enforcement, and to supervise the immigration process only. In 2002, Congress passed the Homeland Security Act. Thus, ICE was created in 2003 through a merger of the investigative and interior enforcement elements of the U.S. Customs Service and the Immigration and Naturalization Service, INS. ICE now has more than 20,000 law enforcement and support personnel in more than 400 offices in the United States and around the world. Now, how did so many career ICE agents get fired or resign or forced to resign? And how is it that Trump and his administration were able to recruit and hire individuals that are not qualified to be ICE agents? How did this happen? How do we have an 80% turnaround of non-qualified enforcement agents at this particular agency? Doge. That's how. That's how it was done. Just 10 years ago, the annual budget for ICE was less than $6 billion, notably smaller than the other agencies within the Department of Homeland Security. ICE's budget has skyrocketed during Trump's second term, becoming the highest funded U.S. law enforcement agency with $85 billion now at its disposal. You see the chart, right? The chart makes no damn sense. This is building a personal military for domestic use, and we will not allow it on our watch in the United States of America. We are better than this. Nobody voted for this. Nobody voted for this. The windfall is thanks to the one big beautiful bill that we warned and shouted about. The one big beautiful bill, a branding mechanism. enacted last July. After hovering around the 10 billion mark for years, ICE's budget certainly benefited from, well, the spike. Those are your facts. Facts. All right. Jordan, thoughts?
It is an extremely simple question to answer, and you saw Hakeem Jeffries repeatedly avoid it. And that wasn't the only topic. He was also pressed in that interview about AIPAC and donations from AIPAC. And he refused. He tried to deflect, talk about the average contribution from small dollar donors. He's unwilling to be forthcoming, to be honest, to be transparent with his own base. And when we talk about things like ICE right now, funding for ICE, potentially abolishing ICE, or at the very least, committing to that fight to abolish this agency because of what we've seen that they will do. And he throws his hands up and says, well, we're in the minority. Part of being a leader is to give people something proactive to fight for. He's unwilling to do that. And a generous read would be, well, that might be a divisive position, and he doesn't want to hang that anchor around vulnerable Democrats in swing districts in the midterms. That's a generous read. But that also, you have to then reckon with, will he commit to fighting for this after the midterms if Democrats take the House, if potentially Democrats can take the Senate? We're seeing shocking results in special elections in red states where Democrats are flipping red districts in state legislatures by double digits. And these are districts that Trump had in like plus 12, plus 15. And Democrats are flipping these because people are so disgusted by what they're seeing. That is an avenue to fight for progress. You cannot protect the status quo and then expect Republicans to slow down. They have shown that every time they have their hands on the levers of power, they're full send into America's decline. We need leadership that will fight vigorously to take things in the other direction, not preserve the status quo and then expect Republicans to do the right thing. As we have seen time after time, cycle after cycle, Republicans have shown who they are and how willing they are to take things to the extreme. We need someone who is steadfast and vigilant to fight back. And I don't think Jeffries is that person.
Yeah, at least not in this context, for sure. And you're right about the amazing victories that have happened across the states. Some states, the Democrat overperformed the numbers by over 30 points, swinging it from a deficit of 17 to a positive of 20. That goes directly to the heart of this administration. So every time an election is held and a Republican is on the ballot, by proxy Trump is. And you have the wind on your back right now, Hakeem. Dear brother, you have the wind on your back. You can do some things you couldn't do before. Just pause and read the tea leaves if you're willing to lead. All right, we'll bring updates as they come.